We're going to talk a little bit about water plants and ponds. And what we've got here is a square one set into a patio, and we've actually used a stainless steel liner that we had made so that we could sink it right in the ground. It's about 16 inches deep, and we're ready to put our water lily in and a couple of floating plants as well. So we're going to show you how to pot a water lily and get it ready for at least 1 or 2 seasons of growth. The water lilies are winter hardy, so they can stay in the bottom of the pond year round, and they come in an assortment of colors, anywhere from light pinks to reds to yellows, whites, two-tones. Very, very large market available in water lilies, and easy to grow. Cannas can be grown in the garden, and we sell these at the nursery just for putting in big patio pots, or actually right straight in your garden. But a lot of people don't realize that they can also be grown as a water plant. So what we're going to do with this one is just the way it is in this pot. We're going to actually set it in our pond right now, and we call these plants shelf plants or border plants. I've got a couple concrete blocks in the pond. It's going to float a little bit yet. It's not wet enough yet. Get rid of the air bubbles. And this plant will grow in this size pot for the whole season. And these varieties send out new shoots from the base, and they will also flower right through till frost. They are not winter hardy, so they either have to be brought in. Oh, it's going to be okay now. You either have to bring it in and store it, or you have to purchase new ones. All the tropicals are going to be like that. The water lily, being hardy, goes down to the bottom. Maybe once every year or two you can take it back out, check it, see how big it is. Maybe it has to be repotted because every year they do get larger and larger. The water lilies, even though the small one that we have in a pot here is very tiny compared to the large one I used to have in the garden, it's got a tuber. It's got leaves that have already come out in the greenhouse. These leaves, if I put that in the bottom, they're only going to be 4 inches off the bottom, but within a week they will come up 2 feet. So they basically just keep stretching and stretching until they come up to water level. So don't be afraid to plop it right down to the bottom of the pond. This is a small pot, and we're going to have to put it in a much larger pot because they need a lot of soil volume and they need a lot of nutrient. The biggest trick in growing a water lily, feeding. All right. So when they grow in the wild, they usually grow in lakes that have a lot of sediment in the bottom. So they'll have maybe 2 or 3 feet of muck, and they can put their roots down into that muck, and then they can feed as much as they need. And if they get enough food, they keep blooming all season right up till frost. And we're just going to slide it upside down. You can see the roots are already coming out of the bottom. It's a bit of a messy job, but what I like to use is a heavy soil mix, and what that'll do is that'll keep it anchored down to the bottom of the pond. And this plant will fill this basket easily in 1 season, and you'll have roots around the entire. Water plant baskets have meshing so that water and nutrients can flow through to the plant, and it'll also put roots through there and actually crawl across the bottom of the pond, picking up more nutrients as you get sediment on the bottom of your pond. So what we're going to do is plant this one, but it has to be fairly close to the surface as far as soil depth. So we're going to get some special soil for water plants. It's a heavy mix. It's a little bit. This bag is a little bit dry, but it's meant to be heavy so that nothing floats. And we're going to press this in. So we've got about half full. And then what I'm going to use pond tabs, which are a compressed pellet of fertilizer that the water lilies need. And as they get food through the season, they'll just keep putting up more and more flowers. And if your water lilies are in the garden and they bloom for 6 weeks and then they quit, ran out of food. That's a good indication that you got to start putting more fertilizer in. If you use granular fertilizer, it's going to leach into the water and your water is going to get green. So the reason for doing pellets is they're compressed, they're very hard, and what we do is we press them into the soil, not right along the edge of the baskets, but these are going to last at least 6 weeks. So I'm going to put these down below. And as the roots grow in, they're going to find that and they're going to feed on that. And about 6 weeks down the road, the soil's going to be up to the top at that point. I get my finger and I poke a little hole in the soil. I put a pellet in and I push the dirt back around the pellet so that it's not exposed to the water. And you can do that all summer long. The more you feed it, you're going to find that the faster it grows, the more flowers you get. We're going to set the plant at the proper depth. And then we're going to get a little bit more water plant soil. This one's not quite as dusty, but I expect this pot to last probably 2 years. At that point, I would probably lift it back out of the pond, and at that point you could probably even divide it, because instead of having maybe 2 big eyes on it, it'll have probably 5 or 6 or 7. And you may want to split it. If you don't want to split it and you want a bigger plant, you just put it in one size bigger container again, and then you're good for another few years. Some people, if they have large koi, sometimes the koi will want to go in here and they'll flutter around, they'll stir the dirt up a little bit. Small fish generally will not do that, but the larger fish sometimes will. If that's an issue that you have, then we suggest you put about a 1/2 inch of pea stone on top of the dirt after you finish planting, and that'll keep the fish from stirring the dirt up. So what we're going to do is just firm this in a bit. And it's ready to go. Ideal to have some fish in there. A lot of people will put goldfish in, preferably orange ones or something that you're going to see. You can do koi or Sipkens as well. Koi get the largest of all the fish. Some of the koi are very, very fancy. They'll have gold speckles in their scales and are very showy. Most of the fish you can train to actually eat out of your hand after a while, because they'll come to wherever the food goes into the pond. The biggest issue with ponds that we have people coming in the store all the time is that my water is green. I have algae in my water. And the reason for that can be multi. This water here is a little bit dirty, but I haven't had my pump running yet. Once you have water circulation, you get air into the water, and once you get some surface coverage, algae has more difficulty growing. So what I use is either water lettuce, which I have in my hand here. You can see it's got little hair roots all on the bottom. What they do is they feed, and they take all the nutrient out of the water. Nutrient out of the water is what gives you algae in the first place. So what we do is we just throw some of these in. Right, some babies already that have come off the big plant. These spread, and very quickly. They're tropical, they can't take a hard frost, but put enough of them in early in the spring, and the idea is to probably get about 40% coverage of this plant material in your pond. And when you see how many I've put in there right now, it doesn't look like a lot, but in hot weather they'll probably double in a week size-wise, and they'll put new little babies out. So in no time you'll have 30-40% coverage. At that point, sunlight can't get to the water, algae can't grow without sunlight, and they're taking the nutrient out of the water, which the algae grows. 2 ways of keeping your algae down. Once the water clears and you want to see your fish a little more, then you can start taking a few of the plants out and throw them out. All right, but ideally get 50-60% coverage early in the season. Just watch out for frost, because frost can kill these plants. All right, but they're very vigorous growing. The hyacinth is a shinier leafed one. It tends to get a blue flower, but rarely, because our seasons usually are not hot enough. All right, but in tropical countries, they form rafts in the rivers. Very, very fast growing. Right, as my water lily grows, and I'm going to put it in the one side away from where the pump is, because water lilies like fairly level water. They don't like a lot of splashing. If they get a lot of splashing, it does damage to the leaves, and they don't grow as well. So don't put it right underneath the waterfall, or if you have a little water spout running in your water, keep it on the opposite corner. You can feed your fish through the season. Don't be excessive in your feeding, because excessive feeding means excessive nutrient getting released into the water, and that can create algae problems again. But the natural way is good water movement, good coverage, all right? Having plants that actually take nutrient out of the water in order to grow, and almost never have an issue. For those who have a water pump and a filter, a couple little tricks of the trade is when you clean your filter out, most people will go to the tap and they'll rinse their filter, get all the sediment out of it, and then put it back in their pump and start it up again. But what you've done is you've used chlorinated water to rinse your foam filter. That chlorination kills all the bacteria, and bacteria in the filter is what breaks down the nutrient in your water. So you've actually killed the bacteria that's actually helping to make your pond clear. So I suggest that people get a pail, scoop a pail of water out of your pond, clean your filter in that, throw that water out in the garden, and just put your filter back in your pump and run it again, but never use city water to clean your filter, because otherwise it takes about 4 to 6 weeks for that bacterial level to get back up in your filter, enough that you're going to get good control again. All right, a lot of people make that mistake, and we come in, we tell them, use old water. Oh, I have no problem anymore. The canna, if you want to, you can feed that a couple times through the season as well, and any of the other water plants that you could use as accent, and use those pellets again, and just push it into the mud and cover it up. You will notice too that I've put a piece of split rail or log in the pond, and people go, okay, why did he do that? Well, I've drilled a hole through that log, and I can put my hose in there and I can get a little bubbler come out of the one side. But the primary evidence is I get frogs and toads all year long jumping in my pond, and with a 4-inch lip they can't get out. So what I've done is I've floated a piece of log in here. There's a frog sitting right, or a toad sitting right on the edge of the log right in that corner. He can get up out of the water, and he can actually get outside and hunt around for bugs at night, and then they come back to the pond. But otherwise they'll drown over a period of time, because they have to have something to be able to sit on.